The night Ryan and I got engaged. His gaze was stolen by a woman who looked like Sin dressed in silk. She was a model, curves in all the right places, eyes that could melt diamonds, and a smile that knew exactly how much it was worth. She moved like she'd rehearsed temptation itself. Her every gesture an invitation. The men at the party couldn't take their eyes off her. She was that perfect balance, elegant enough for the ballroom, sensual enough for the bedroom. Ryan sneered, pretending disinterest. Women like that, he said under his breath, are only good for one thing. You don't marry them, you keep them for the night. But his eyes betrayed him. He couldn't stop staring. 3 days later, the headlines exploded across every gossip page in Manhattan. Heir to the Miller empire spotted checking into hotel with model Kelly Ray. I hadn't even had time to process the betrayal when he came to me, looking strangely calm. Grace, he said, I'm sorry, but I can't help how I feel about her. Kelly deserves a title. How about this? You'll be my wife, and she'll be my second. You two can share me. I was standing outside his bedroom door when he said it, my heart already halfway broken. I pushed it open and saw them tangled in the sheets. That was the moment I knew love could rot. Miss Grace, don't look. Aunt May, our housekeeper, scrambled to turn off the television, but she was too late. On screen, Ryan and Kelly were walking hand in hand into a hotel lobby, paparazzi flashes lighting up their faces. The commentator's voice oozed mockery. Looks like our famously celibate golden boy couldn't resist Manhattan's most seductive model after all. The words detonated in my ears. I felt the blood drain from my face. Move, I said quietly. Aunt May froze, but I pushed past her. My eyes stayed on the screen, the man I was supposed to marry, kissing another woman like he'd never known shame. I didn't cry. I didn't even scream. I just turned, grabbed my car keys, and left. The Maserati, his engagement gift, purred to life. He'd once said, "You're worth everything I have." Grace. What a joke. When I arrived at the Millers' mansion, the staff tried to stop me from going upstairs. Their faces were full of pity, some even of amusement. That told me everything I needed to know. My heels clicked against the marble, each step an act of defiance. From behind his door came the unmistakable sound of betrayal, moans, soft laughter. A man's voice whispering a name that wasn't mine. I pushed the door open. My heart didn't just break, it froze, splintering into 1,000 tiny shards. Ryan didn't even stop. Not right away. Only after another kiss did he finally turn, his face a picture of annoyance rather than guilt. Well, he said, breathless, you've seen it. I might as well be honest. I plan to give Kelly a title. She's still pure. Grace. I can't mistreat her. But I don't want to lose you either. You'll be the wife. She'll be my private woman. Everyone wins, right? The air left my lungs. Do you even hear yourself? I asked. That's disgusting. His eyes darkened. Disgusting? Don't be dramatic. We're not even married yet. I have the right to choose how I live. Every man in our world keeps a mistress. Even your father did. My nails dug into my palms. He knew what that meant to me. He knew my father's infidelity had killed my mother. He'd promised me, sworn he'd never cheat, never humiliate me. I'll make it up to you, he added casually. Here. He tossed a platinum card onto the bed. 300,000. Buy yourself something nice. The sound of that card hitting the sheets echoed louder than any slap. I turned away. For a long moment, he thought I'd accepted it. He even smiled, pulling Kelly close again as I walked out. But I knew exactly what I had to do. Mrs. Miller was meditating when I found her. I waited 2 hours before she opened her eyes. Grace? She said, startled by the look on my face. I placed a velvet box on the table, the heirloom bracelet she'd given me when Ryan proposed. I'm returning this, I said quietly. I can't wear it. Her brow furrowed. What's going on? Ryan brought another woman home. He wants to marry her too. I'm not going to marry a man who cheats. My mother taught me better than that. The warmth drained from Mrs. Miller's expression. That ungrateful fool, she snapped, standing up so fast her meditation beads scattered. This engagement was arranged by your grandfather and ours. The position of Mrs. Miller belongs to you, and only you. No second wives, no mistresses. That's the family rule. I looked out the window. Spring sunlight spilled over the garden, the cherry blossoms trembling in the breeze. Then I'll marry someone else in the family, I said. I'll marry Ethan. The words hit her like a slap. She stared at me, speechless. Ethan? She whispered. Ryan's uncle? Grace. That man is dangerous. He deals in things you can't even imagine. He's ruthless. Sometimes, I said softly, the kindest faces hide the dirtiest hearts. And sometimes, the coldest man turns out to have the warmest soul. For a second, I saw Ethan in my mind, his sharp eyes, his quiet strength, the way he once knelt to fix a broken toy for a child at a charity home. Just then, the door burst open. Ryan stormed in, fury blazing in his eyes. He grabbed my wrist, squeezing until pain shot up my arm. So this is what you do? Run to my mother and tattle? I pulled free. His cologne mixed with another scent, Kelly's perfume. I nearly gagged. I didn't come to tattle, I said evenly. He barked a bitter laugh. Don't lie. I can tell she's mad at me. You're poisoning her against me. He leaned closer, eyes full of disdain. You know, Kelly never complains. She's clever, business-minded, fun to talk to. Not like you, always so serious. Maybe if you were more like her. Something inside me went utterly still. Mrs. Miller's anger crackled in the air. But before she could speak, Kelly herself appeared in the doorway, feigning innocence. Ryan instantly pulled her into his arms like a shield. Mom, he said, I love her. Kelly doesn't want Grace's position. She just wants to stay by my side. She's not greedy. I laughed. A cold, humorless sound. Not greedy? Give her time. Ryan wasn't done humiliating me. You said you wanted grandchildren. Mom, I can only feel passion with Kelly. With Grace, it's flat. Kelly lowered her lashes. Mrs. Miller, I don't want money or status. I just want Ryan to be happy. Mrs. Miller was shaking with fury now, and Ryan had no idea that in that same moment, I had already decided to marry Ethan. The more Ryan shouted, the calmer I became. It was like the storm inside me had finally burned itself out, leaving nothing but cold, perfect clarity. Mrs. Miller pressed her lips together and said nothing more. Her silence was its own verdict. When I walked out of that room, I knew I would never walk back in as Ryan's fiancé again, but I didn't expect what came next. Outside the mansion, a black Lamborghini stopped in front of me. Its tinted window rolled down, and a deep voice said, "Get in, Ethan." The man Ryan called dangerous, the one everyone said had one foot in the underworld. He was wearing black, always black, his expression unreadable. Yet his tone held something steady, something that felt absurdly like safety. I got in. He didn't say a word as he drove, the engine's hum filling the silence between us. Only when we reached my place did he finally speak. "The arrangements are done," he said simply. "The wedding, the paperwork, everything. You won't have to lift a finger." I turned to him, startled. "You, what?" Without answering, he reached into his coat and took out a small box. Inside lay a silver necklace, its pendant shaped like a falcon's head. He stepped closer, his fingers brushing the back of my neck as he fastened it around me. "That was my grandfather's," he said. "Now it's yours." My breath caught. Everyone in New York knew that piece. It was more than jewelry. It was a symbol of Ethan's authority, of the quiet empire he ruled. Giving it to me meant trust, maybe even surrender. "I don't need this," I whispered. "I know," he said, eyes meeting mine. "But I do." For the first time that night, something inside me softened. By morning, the city knew. Every socialite group chat in Manhattan lit up with one message: Grace Parker is marrying Ethan Miller, Ryan's ex-fiancé, his uncle's future wife. The gossip spread like wildfire. Some pitied him, others smirked. Most just waited for blood. I didn't care. I'd muted the world. Ryan called over and over. I let the phone ring until my nerves went numb, then finally shut it off and poured myself a drink. He could have the tabloids. I just wanted silence. Days later, Ethan showed up again, unannounced. As usual. "I thought we should pick a ring," he said, his tone flat, like he was discussing a business deal. But when we arrived at the jeweler's, he didn't let anyone else touch a thing. He opened every case himself, studied each diamond like a man memorizing battle plans. I smiled faintly. "You know you don't have to do all this, right?" He looked up, eyes dark and unwavering. "I don't do half measures." I could have said something clever. Instead, I said nothing, afraid that if I spoke, he'd hear the tremor in my chest. When I finally stepped into the fitting room with the wedding gown, I caught his reflection in the mirror, leaning against the wall, watching me with quiet intensity. "Don't you dare come in here," I warned, half laughing. half serious. His mouth twitched. Why not? I'm the groom. My cheeks flamed. Not yet. He said nothing more, but his gaze lingered, steady, protective, terrifyingly intimate. The shop assistant whispered behind me, "You're so lucky, Miss Grace. Not every man looks at a woman like that." I didn't reply, but my pulse answered for me. When we were done, Ethan's driver offered to take me home. He said he had business to attend to, and I didn't question it. But the moment I stepped out of the car in front of my building, a shadow loomed behind me, strong arms wrapping around me from behind before I could even turn. "Grace." Ryan's voice cracked against my ear. "Please, don't marry him." For a second, the scent, the warmth, it all rushed back. The man I had once loved. But love wasn't enough anymore. Not after the lies. Not after Kelly. I tore myself free. "Let go of me." He grabbed my wrist again. Desperate. "You don't understand. He's dangerous. You can't marry him. You're making a mistake." I stared at him. The same man who had once told me I wasn't enough. "Ethan has never lied to me," I said. "That already makes him better than you." He flinched. "Grace, you're blind. He's ruthless, he kills people when they cross him." I took a step closer, eyes level with his. "Then maybe I'll finally be safe." He stared at me, stunned into silence. "I'm done being your doormat, Ryan. You cheated. You lied. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You don't get to warn me about anyone else's sins." "Grace, don't." My voice broke like ice cracking. "If you touch me again, I'll call the cops. Or Ethan. Take your pick." And then, as if fate itself wanted to twist the knife, Kelly appeared. She looked radiant in her designer dress, one manicured hand resting on her stomach. "Ryan," she purred, "you promised you'd stop chasing her." My blood ran cold. "You're pregnant." Kelly smirked. Surprised? Ryan turned pale, but he didn't deny it. Something inside me snapped. "You're disgusting," I spat. "You destroy everything you touch. And now you want to ruin her too?" "She doesn't matter," Ryan shouted. "I'll pay her off. I'll make her disappear if you just stay." My jaw dropped. "You'd kill your own child for your pride?" That was the last thing I said to him before I walked away. Behind me, his voice broke, half rage, half heartbreak, but I didn't look back. The tabloids went insane. The scandal of the century, they called it. The heir who lost his fiancé to his uncle. The model who claimed to be pregnant. Ryan became a punchline. But I didn't care about that either. Ethan did. When he showed up that night, his voice was quieter than usual. "You're sure you still want this?" I looked at him, the man everyone feared. The one who'd given me the only thing Ryan never could, peace. "Yes," I said. "I do." He nodded once. Then it settled. The morning of my wedding, the city was wrapped in soft fog. From the penthouse window, Manhattan looked weightless, like a dream trying to dissolve before sunrise. They said a bride shouldn't leave the house before the ceremony. I didn't plan to. Not because of superstition, because I was afraid if I stepped outside, the ghosts of my past would follow me down the aisle. Ethan, of course, wasn't one for tradition. He'd arranged everything himself, the ceremony at St. George's Chapel on Fifth Avenue, the reception at the plaza. The guest list was small but terrifying: CEOs, judges, politicians, men and women who ruled the city without ever appearing in the papers. When I stood before the mirror, the woman staring back didn't look like me. The gown shimmered like frozen light. The falcon pendant at my neck caught the morning sun and glowed faintly, as though reminding me who I belonged to now. A knock at the door. "Grace," Aunt May said softly, stepping in with her usual gentleness. "He's waiting downstairs." I smiled faintly. Of course he is. Outside, black cars lined the street like sentinels, and at the end of them, Ethan. He stood beside the limousine, dressed in a black tuxedo that fit him like sin itself. No smile, no pretense, just a man who looked like he'd kill for what was his. When our eyes met, something inside me loosened. Not because he looked kind, he didn't. Because for once, I didn't have to pretend. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You look dangerous," I said, my voice catching. A rare flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Then we match." He offered me his arm. "Ready?" I hesitated. "You sure about this? About me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned closer, his breath brushing my ear. I've never been more sure of anything. The ceremony blurred like a half-remembered dream. Vows, applause, Flashes from photographers hired only to capture what Ethan allowed. When he slipped the ring onto my finger, his hand trembled ever so slightly, not from nerves, from restraint. "You're mine now," he whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. A shiver ran through me, not fear, not quite. Something deeper, darker. I looked up into his eyes. "And you're mine." For a man who never smiled. He almost did then, but peace never lasts long in this city. While we toasted champagne under the crystal chandeliers, the air outside the plaza was already buzzing. Headlines screamed from digital billboards: Miller family drama, Ryan Miller crashes wedding. The doors burst open before anyone could react. Ryan stood there, wild-eyed, hair disheveled, his once pristine suit soaked with rain. Cameras flashed. Guests gasped. "Grace!" he shouted, voice raw. "You can't do this." Security moved to block him, but Ethan raised a hand. "Let him." Ryan stormed toward us, shaking, his words breaking apart between sobs and fury. "You can't marry him. He's my uncle. You were mine first." I stayed still, my heart strangely calm. "You lost me the night you chose her." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Her? Kelly? She's gone. She's nothing. I sent her away. It's you I love." Ethan's eyes flicked toward him, cold as steel. "Watch your words." Ryan ignored him. "He's using you, Grace. He doesn't love anyone. He can't." The room went silent. I turned to Ethan, searching his face, but he didn't flinch. "Maybe he doesn't," I said quietly, "but at least he respects me. That's more than you ever did." Ryan's voice cracked. "You think this is respect? You think he'll stop at you? He'll destroy you, Grace, just like he destroys everyone who crosses him." Ethan took a slow step forward, every eye in the room following him. "If I were going to destroy her," he said evenly, "she wouldn't be wearing my ring." Ryan trembled, his rage collapsing into despair. "You don't deserve her." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "You had your chance." A single nod from him, and security led Ryan away, still shouting her name. I watched as the doors closed behind him. For the first time in years, I didn't feel pity, only relief. Later, after the guests had gone and the ballroom lay silent, Ethan found me on the terrace overlooking Central Park. The city lights painted his profile in gold and shadow. He stood there, hands in his pockets, saying nothing. "You didn't have to let him in," I said quietly. "I did." "Why?" "Because you needed to see it." His tone was steady, matter of fact. "You needed to know you were right to let him go." I swallowed hard, the truth of it hitting me like a slow wave. He stepped closer, his voice low. "You don't owe him anything. Not anger, not love, not even memory." I nodded, my throat tightening. "And you? What do I owe you?" Ethan's gaze softened, barely. "Nothing," he said, "but I'll take everything you're willing to give." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he lifted his hand, brushed a loose strand of hair from my face, and kissed me. It wasn't tender, it was claiming, and yet, in that fierce, possessive touch, I felt something terrifyingly close to peace. The next morning, headlines had changed again. The narrative was no longer about scandal, it was about power. Ethan Miller marries Grace Parker, the alliance that shook Manhattan. But to me, it wasn't an alliance. It was survival. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something that felt a lot like redemption. Marriage to Ethan didn't feel like marriage at first. It felt like moving into a fortress. His penthouse overlooked the city like a watchtower, glass, steel, silence. The walls were too tall, the air too still. Even the servants moved like ghosts, perfectly efficient, never speaking unless spoken to. For the first week, Ethan was barely home. Meetings, calls, late-night visits to God knows where. But every morning when I woke, there was always something left on my nightstand: fresh lilies, a note written in his clean, deliberate hand. "Drink something warm before noon. You fell asleep on the balcony again. Next time, I'll carry you in." It wasn't romance. It was awareness. Like he was always watching, always protecting, even from a distance. One evening, I found him in his study, the skyline reflected in the glass behind him. He didn't hear me enter. His focus was locked on a file open before him, filled with photos, Ryan's face among them. "Still keeping tabs on him?" I asked quietly. He didn't look up. "He's unstable." "Because of us?" Ethan finally lifted his eyes. Those cold, gray irises flickering like a storm restrained. Because of himself, he said. You were just the excuse he needed to fall apart. I walked closer, studying the photographs. Ryan looked different, haunted, thinner, eyes bloodshot. Is he dangerous? He's desperate, Ethan replied. That's worse. I shivered. You're not going to hurt him, are you? Ethan's gaze held mine. I'll protect what's mine. The way he said it, flat, absolute, made something flutter and ache inside me. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered out onto the balcony, the city a river of light below. Behind me, the sliding door opened quietly. You should be in bed, Ethan said. I didn't turn. Can't. He came to stand beside me, the faint scent of smoke and cedar in his coat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I whispered, I don't even know who I am anymore. He glanced at me. Your Grace, you survived. That's not the same thing. Ethan leaned against the railing. You think survival isn't strength? I looked up at him, eyes stinging. I think I've spent too long being strong for people who didn't deserve it. Something softened in his face. Without a word, he reached out, sliding an arm around my shoulders. The gesture was uncharacteristically gentle, almost hesitant, as if he wasn't sure I'd let him. I won't ask you to trust me, he said quietly, but I'll earn it. I swallowed the lump in my throat. That sounds like a promise. It is, and for the first time since my world had fallen apart, I believed one. The next morning, I woke to find him still asleep beside me, a rare sight. The light touched his features, softening the sharp lines of his face. For all the power he carried, he looked almost human then. I reached out, brushed my fingertips across his hair. He caught my hand midair without opening his eyes. You're staring, he murmured. You were peaceful, I whispered back. His lips curved. Don't get used to it. That afternoon, the illusion shattered. Ethan's head of security, a scarred man named Mason, arrived unannounced. He leaned close to Ethan, murmuring something I couldn't hear. Ethan's expression changed, a muscle in his jaw ticked once, twice. Then he rose. Stay inside, he told me. No matter what you hear. What happened? He didn't answer, but when he reached the door, he paused, looked back, and said softly, lock it. I watched from the window as black SUVs pulled up to the front gates. Men stepped out, armed, deliberate, moving like soldiers. For one terrifying second, I saw Ryan among them. By nightfall, the confrontation was over, though no one would tell me how. When Ethan finally returned, his shirt was torn, his knuckles bloodied. He didn't speak, just walked past me, straight to the kitchen sink, washing away the crimson streaks under running water. Was it him? I asked. He didn't answer. Ethan, he looked up, eyes sharp. Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. Silence stretched between us, thick and trembling. Then, more quietly, he said, he's alive. I exhaled, my knees nearly giving out. Ethan turned off the water, grabbed a towel, and pressed it to his hand. You don't have to fear him anymore, he said. He won't touch you again. There was no pride in his tone, just exhaustion. I stepped closer, took the towel from him, and began wrapping his hand myself. You always think you have to fix everything alone, I murmured. His jaw tightened. That's how I've survived. I tied the bandage. Slow and careful. You don't have to survive anymore. For a moment, I thought he'd pull away. Instead, he let out a long, unsteady breath and pressed his forehead to mine. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was trust. Finally cracking open the armor around him. Either way, that was the first night he truly let me in. The tabloids spun their own version of the story the next morning. Attempted break-in at Miller residence. Rogue relative accused of harassment. No names, of course, but everyone knew. Ryan had crossed a line he could never uncross. And Ethan, he protected me in a way Ryan never could, without excuses, without apology. I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt safe. Maybe that was the most dangerous feeling of all. A week after the attack, the city went back to pretending everything was fine. That's what New York did best, pretend. No one cared about the blood scrubbed off a millionaire's doorstep, as long as the headlines moved on. But inside the penthouse, nothing felt fine. Ethan had become quieter than usual, still protective, still composed, but distant in a way that felt colder than silence. I told myself not to ask, not to push, but the longer I watched him retreat behind that wall of control, the more the questions clawed at me. Who was he before all this power? What had broken him enough to make him this way? One night, I woke up to find his side of the bed empty again. I followed the faint sound of piano music, low, hesitant, almost painful in its beauty. In the dark study, Ethan sat at the grand piano, his hands moving across the keys like he was trying not to remember something. On the stand in front of him, instead of sheet music, lay an old photograph, faded at the corners. A woman, young and radiant, holding a child that looked unmistakably like him. I stepped closer. Is that your mother? He didn't stop playing. What happened to her? The melody faltered. Then, quietly, she was shot. Wrong place, wrong time. My father said it was a robbery, and it wasn't? He looked up, eyes glinting in the half-light. It was a message. The notes died under his hands. He closed the piano lid slowly, like he was sealing a wound. After that, he said, I learned that love makes you vulnerable. That's how people get hurt. Or used. I stood there, my heart aching in places I didn't know still existed. Maybe that's why you protect me like I'm going to disappear. I whispered. He met my gaze. You already almost did. In the days that followed, I began to notice things, subtle, deliberate signs of control disguised as care. The driver who followed me even when I said I wanted to walk. The calls he made after every meeting. The questions phrased like statements. You were home by 7. You didn't answer Mason's call. It should have terrified me. But instead, I found a strange comfort in it, like I was learning the language of a man who'd only ever been fluent in fear. Still, some part of me knew that peace built on secrets never lasts. One evening, while Ethan was out, I received an email. No sender name. Just a single subject line. Do you really know your husband? Attached were surveillance photos, grainy, black and white. Ethan, standing in a dark alley, shaking hands with a man whose face I recognized immediately. Ryan. My stomach dropped. The timestamp was from 3 nights ago, when Ethan returned home. I was waiting in the living room, the printed photos on the coffee table between us. Do you want to explain this? He glanced down, and for the first time since I'd known him, he hesitated. It's not what it looks like, he said evenly. That's exactly what people say when it's exactly what it looks like. Grace, you said he was dangerous. You said he wouldn't touch me again. Then why the hell were you meeting him in the middle of the night? Ethan's jaw tightened. He took a deep breath, as if choosing every word with surgical precision. Because I needed to make sure he wouldn't try again. By meeting him alone? I shot back. By shaking his hand? His voice hardened. Because if I didn't, he was going to hurt someone else. The air between us thickened, sharp as glass. I stared at him, searching for some trace of the man I'd begun to trust. But all I saw was control, calculated, relentless, absolute. Do you even know what honesty feels like anymore? I whispered. Ethan didn't move. Honesty doesn't keep people alive. That night, I slept in the guest room for the first time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there, eyes open, realizing I had fallen in love with a man who didn't know how to be human. And still, God help me, I missed him. The next morning, the world caught fire again. A breaking news alert flashed across the TV. Business heir Ryan Miller hospitalized after explosion in Midtown. My blood froze. The footage showed his car, or what was left of it, a heap of twisted metal surrounded by smoke and flashing red lights. Ethan. I whispered. He appeared behind me, silent as a shadow. You knew, I said. He didn't answer. You knew, I repeated, my voice trembling. You met with him, and now he's alive, Ethan said sharply. Barely, and this wasn't me. I turned to face him, disbelief cutting through my chest. Then who? He looked past me, toward the city skyline. His expression changed, wariness, calculation, something close to dread. There are people, he said slowly, who've been waiting for me to lose control. They think you're my weakness. They're not wrong. I took a step back. So what now? You lock me away? Keep me safe in your tower while the world burns around us? If that's what it takes. No, I said, my voice breaking. That's not safety, Ethan. That's prison. He reached for me, but I stepped out of his grasp. I won't be another ghost in your life, I whispered. If you really want to protect me, then trust me enough to stand beside you, not behind you. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, softly, he said, you don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. He exhaled. Slow and heavy. You will hate me if I do. I looked him straight in the eyes. Then I'd rather hate you for the truth than love you for the lie. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere far below. Inside, silence hung between us, thick, electric, irreversible, and I knew, whatever came next, the line between love and survival had finally disappeared. The news said Ryan was in critical condition, but when I saw him again, weeks later, he looked anything but broken. The hospital room was dark, the blinds half drawn. He was sitting up in bed, a sling on his arm, bandages around his ribs, but his eyes burned with something far more dangerous than pain. Grace, he said quietly, as if my name were a secret. You came. I shouldn't have. Ethan didn't want me here, but I needed answers, and the man in this room had them. I need to know what really happened, I said, stepping closer. He smiled, slow and bitter. Of course you do. Because he won't tell you. Will he? Ryan, he's been lying to you since the day you met. His voice grew sharper, edged with hysteria. You think he's your savior, your protector? He's the reason your mother's company went bankrupt. The reason your father disappeared. My stomach turned. What are you talking about? He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a whisper. Ethan's father and mine built their fortune on blood. They bought silence, destroyed competitors, buried scandals. Your family stood in their way. That's not true, isn't it? He hissed. Ask him about the fire, the one that killed your father's partner. Ask him who ordered it. The air in the room grew suffocating. You're lying, I said weakly. Ryan's smile was tragic. You always said you wanted the truth, Grace, but the truth doesn't love you back. When I left the hospital, the city air felt colder than I remembered. By the time I reached home, Ethan was waiting. He was sitting in the dark, his sleeves rolled up, a half-empty glass beside him. He didn't ask where I'd been. He already knew. You saw him, he said flatly. Yes, and he told you. I want to hear it from you. He stared at me for a long time, then exhaled. Sit down. His story came out in fragments, each piece heavier than the last. Yes, there had been a fire. Yes, it had been ordered. And yes, his father had signed the order. But you were part of it. I whispered. I was 20, he said, and I did nothing to stop it. Silence. I didn't know your father would be there that night. He continued quietly. But that doesn't matter, does it? I could have stopped it. I didn't. Tears blurred my vision. You've been protecting me all this time out of guilt? Out of responsibility, he corrected softly. And because somewhere along the way, guilt turned into something else. My voice broke. Love? He didn't answer, just looked at me, and that was enough. I stood up, my chest tight. You don't get to decide what I deserve. I'm not deciding, he said. I'm warning you. If you stay with me, they'll come for you next. The same people who came for your father. Then teach me how to fight them. His head snapped up. No. Yes, I said firmly. You can't keep building walls around me, Ethan. I'm not another thing you have to protect. I'm someone who deserves to know the truth and face it. He rose, his expression unreadable, torn between fury and fear. You have no idea what you're asking for. Maybe not, I said, my voice trembling, but I'd rather drown beside you than live in your shadow. That night, neither of us slept. He paced the room until dawn, and I watched him, this man who could command an empire but couldn't forgive himself. When the sun finally rose, he sat beside me on the edge of the bed. There's something I need to show you, he said. He took me to an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Dust coated every surface, sunlight filtering through broken windows. In the center of the room stood a single metal cabinet. Ethan opened it and pulled out a stack of files, old, yellowed, stamped confidential. Inside were photos, contracts, crime scene reports, all proof of what the Miller family had done to build its empire. My father's name was on one of the pages. I kept everything, Ethan said quietly. I've been dismantling it piece by piece for years. My father's empire, my own name, it all burns when this goes public. You've been planning this? Since the day I buried her. Your mother, he nodded once. She found out what my father did. He had her killed. My heart stopped. Ethan, his voice broke for the first time. That's why I can't let them touch you. You think I'm protecting my guilt, but it's you. It's always been you. He turned away, his shoulders tense, breath ragged. I stepped forward, laid a trembling hand on his back. Then don't do it alone. When he looked at me again, There was something new in his eyes, not coldness, not control, resolve. "Then you stand beside me," he said, "and you don't flinch when it starts." "I won't." And for the first time, he believed me. That night, the two of us sat in silence, surrounded by ghosts of the past, files, photographs, the weight of every sin. It wasn't love that bound us anymore. It was war. The next morning, Ethan's phone buzzed. He answered, his expression hardening instantly. "What?" He listened for a few seconds, then went still. When he looked up, his eyes had turned to ice. "Ryan's gone," he said. I froze. "Gone where?" "Out of the hospital. Disappeared." And just like that, the peace we'd built, fragile, flickering, went up in flames. For 2 weeks, there was silence. Then the world began to whisper again. It started with a single headline on a minor news site: "Ryan Miller sells tell-all memoir rights for 7 figures. By the next morning, his face was everywhere, polished, charming, repentant. He was doing interviews from a safe location, talking about trauma, betrayal, surviving the corruption of the Miller empire. And the worst part? People believed him. I watched it unfold on television, his voice smooth, his eyes glassy with false humility. "I forgive my uncle," he said to the reporter, "but people deserve the truth. The empire was built on crime, blood, and silence. And Grace Parker, she's not as innocent as she looks." My breath caught. He had just weaponized my name. The reporter leaned forward. "Are you suggesting she was involved?" Ryan smiled faintly. "Let's just say, no one stays with Ethan Miller without getting their hands dirty." The screen blurred. I didn't even realize I'd thrown the remote until it shattered against the wall. By the time Ethan came home, my hands were shaking. He took one look at the screen, then at me, and his expression turned to stone. "I'll handle it," he said. "Handle it?" I snapped. "He's not just talking about you, he's dragging me into this. He's trying to provoke me." "Well, it's working." Ethan closed the distance between us in 3 slow, measured steps. "Grace," he said, low and even, "I need you to stay calm. This isn't about reputation anymore, it's about control. He wants you scared because fear makes people predictable." "I'm not scared," I said, even as my voice trembled. "I'm furious." A shadow of a smile touched his lips. "Good. Stay that way." 3 nights later, we received an anonymous package. No return address. Inside, a single USB drive. When Ethan plugged it in, the screen flickered to life. Surveillance footage. Me, walking home from the florist, sitting in a cafe, buying groceries. Each clip dated, timed, labeled, and in the corner of every frame, a faint reflection. "Ryan." Ethan froze. His jaw clenched. His fingers dug into the desk hard enough to draw blood. "He's been following you," he said, voice flat with fury. "For weeks." My throat tightened. "He's stalking me? He's hunting me. You're just the bait." That night, Ethan doubled the security detail. I wanted to protest, but the look in his eyes, sharp, haunted, stopped me. "This isn't about revenge anymore," he said quietly. "He's trying to break the one thing I can't rebuild." "Your empire?" He shook his head. "You." Days passed like the pause before a storm. The city moved on, oblivious, while we lived in constant, suffocating vigilance, until one evening, the storm broke. We were returning from a meeting downtown when a black SUV cut across traffic and slammed into our car. The sound was like thunder. Glass exploded. Tires screamed. The world spun. When I opened my eyes, I was upside down, smoke curling through the air. Ethan's hand was already on me, dragging me free of the wreck. "Grace, look at me," he said, his voice trembling for the first time. "Are you hurt?" I could barely speak. "I'm fine." A shot cracked through the night. Ethan shoved me to the ground, covering me with his body as another bullet shattered the streetlight above us. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a gun, eyes burning. "Stay down." Ethan, he was already moving, silent, precise, a ghost of vengeance in a 3-piece suit. I saw him disappear behind the overturned SUV, heard 2 more shots, then silence. When he returned, there was blood on his sleeve. "It's over," he said, but his voice told me it wasn't. Hours later, back at the penthouse, Mason was waiting with grim news. "They found the vehicle registered under a shell company," he said. "Guess who owns it?" Ethan didn't need to ask. Ryan. He was alive, free, and escalating. "Call off the press conference," Mason urged. If you go public with the files now, he'll retaliate again. That's exactly why we are going public, Ethan said. He wants to make this a war? Then I'll end it. I grabbed his arm. You'll end yourself if you keep this up. He turned to me, eyes blazing. He won't stop until I'm either ruined or dead. And if I'm gone, he'll come for you. This is the only way to finish it. Then let me stand beside you. He shook his head. You don't belong in this darkness. Yes, I do, I said, stepping closer. You brought me into it. Don't you dare push me out now. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he kissed me, hard, desperate, like it might be the last time. The next morning, Ethan held a press conference in the heart of Manhattan. The room was packed, reporters, cameras, flashes, and me, standing beside him, hand trembling but unflinching. He didn't defend himself. He confessed every crime, every cover-up, every sin of the Miller Empire. And then he named the ones still hiding in the shadows. It was chaos. Reporters shouting, phones buzzing, headlines already exploding across the internet. By the time we left the building, Ethan's phone was vibrating nonstop. Mason answered one call, then froze. It's Ryan, he said. He wants to meet. Ethan's jaw tightened. Where? Mason hesitated. The pier. The sky was bleeding into dusk when we arrived. The wind carried salt and rust and the echo of old sins. Ryan was waiting, leaning against a car, a gun glinting at his side. Well, he said, his voice almost cheerful, isn't this poetic? You burn the empire, and we all drown with it. Ethan stepped forward. It was never yours to begin with. Ryan laughed. You always thought you were the savior, didn't you? The righteous one cleaning up Daddy's mess. But you're just like him. He turned the gun toward Ethan. And now you die like him too. Ryan. Stop! I shouted. He didn't even look at me. You should thank me, Grace. Once he's gone, you'll finally be free. Free from what? I cried. From the only man who ever tried to make things right? He blinked, just once, and in that heartbeat of hesitation, Ethan moved. A flash, a shout, a shot, then silence. When the ringing in my ears cleared, Ryan was on the ground, the gun skittering into the dark. Ethan stood over him, chest rising and falling, his own weapon lowered. Blood spread beneath Ryan's body like ink on water. He was still breathing, but barely. Ethan looked at me, his voice a whisper. Call it in. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Grace, he said again, softer now. It's over. But it didn't feel over. It felt like the beginning of an ending we hadn't yet earned. The police arrived within minutes, but it felt like years. By the time the sirens reached the pier, Ryan was still breathing, barely. His eyes fluttered open once, found Ethan, and in a voice that was more air than sound, he said, You should have let me burn it all. Then he was gone, just like that. The feud that had destroyed generations ended with the sound of the sea. They took Ethan away that night. He didn't resist. He turned to me once before stepping into the back of the police car. His expression unreadable, somewhere between relief and exhaustion. I'll find you when this is over, he said softly. The door closed, and the world went quiet. The weeks that followed were a blur of headlines and hearings. Heir of Miller dynasty faces trial. Corporate scandal unveiled, empire built on crime and deceit. Grace Parker cooperates with authorities. Every photo showed him in handcuffs. Yet somehow he looked freer than he ever had before. When I took the stand, the courtroom was packed. Ethan didn't look at me until I said the words that mattered most. He's guilty, I admitted, voice trembling. But he's also the only one who tried to stop it. For a heartbeat, his eyes met mine, calm, steady, almost grateful. He was sentenced to 7 years. Could have been 20, but the evidence he'd turned over, the confessions he'd made, it saved lives. And the court knew it. When the verdict was read, he didn't flinch. He only nodded once, as if finally, the weight had somewhere to go. Afterward, his lawyer handed me an envelope. Inside was a single note, written in Ethan's precise handwriting. Grace, don't wait for me. Build something honest. Something that doesn't need saving. I cried for hours, not because I'd lost him, but because for the first time, I understood him. 3 years passed. The world moved on, as it always does. I moved upstate, bought a small house with a garden and too many wildflowers. Sometimes, when the wind carried the scent of rain, I'd hear piano music in my head, soft, hesitant, incomplete. That was how he played when he was trying not to feel. One evening, I received a letter. No return address. Just a faint seal pressed into the envelope. Inside, a single line, "It's done," and a train ticket, one way, to the coast. I don't know what made me go. Maybe hope. Maybe closure. Maybe the part of me that still believed in impossible forgiveness. The pier was empty when I arrived. The same one where it had ended years ago. The sun was setting, gold bleeding into silver across the water, and then I saw him. Older, thinner, eyes softer than I remembered, but unmistakably Ethan. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled, small and uncertain. "You came. I wasn't sure I would," I said. "Neither was I." He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching me. "I've thought about what you said. About love being something you build beside someone, not behind them. And I think I finally understand it." The wind caught my hair, and for a second, everything felt still, like the city. The years, the pain had folded into a single, fragile piece. "You don't owe me anything," I whispered. He shook his head. "You're wrong. I owe you the truth." Finally, he took my hand and placed something small in my palm, a ring. Simple, silver, worn at the edges. "It was my mother's," he said. "She used to say forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without the pain." I closed my fingers around it. "Do you believe that?" He looked out toward the sea. "I'm learning to." We stood there as the light faded, neither of us reaching for the other, yet bound by everything we'd survived. Maybe this was love, not the kind that burns, but the kind that endures. Quiet, honest, finally free, and for the first time in years, I felt whole again. Epilogue. Months later, I opened a small nonprofit under my mother's name, helping victims of corporate corruption reclaim their lives. On opening day, I found a bouquet waiting by the door. White lilies. No note, but tucked beneath the ribbon was a single piece of paper, folded twice. "The piano's fixed. Come play when you're ready." I smiled, tears blurring the words. Maybe I would. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Because love, I'd learned, wasn't about staying. It was about becoming. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any thoughts about this story, feel free to share them in the comments section. Here is Roses and Love, sharing stories about marriage and women every day. See you tomorrow.